about her experience canvassing for Lorraine Wilburn, who's running for House District 48 in Ohio. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
I know this might be a strange experience for you being on a podcast. So you had mentioned in the previous segment that you were going to go out canvassing in Ohio, and now you are back.
I am.
So first of all, if you could just tell us a little bit, because I've actually never been canvassing in person. If you could tell us a little bit about what canvassing actually entails. Like, what did you actually do?
Yeah, so, I mean, my experience is probably a little bit different than if you just signed up with a campaign, because I got to go with the actual candidate herself, and she picked me up in her car and drove me there, so that's probably not the usual way things happen. Although, if you're working with state-level candidates, it may not be that unusual for something like that. But the parts of it that would be the same is that there's always going to be some sort of meetup spot. My meetup spot happened to be my parents' driveway, but, there's a meetup spot. And there's always going to be a list of houses. So you're not just randomly walking down the street and being like, I don't know, let's go stop there. Like, there's a list of voters that you want to talk to. And each candidate, each campaign is going to have a different way of identifying which voters they want to talk to. So often if you're going with a Democratic candidate, they may only have lists of registered Democrats. And those are the houses you're going to go to talk to. Some campaigns are expanding their reach a little bit. They're going to go to Republicans, but they're probably not going to go talk to people who are like dyed in the wool, have voted Republican since the beginning of time and have never changed their mind. They may be looking at people who don't vote every time, trying to convince them to vote. They may be going for people whose party registration is flipped back and forth some. So, depends on the state and whether you have to be registered in a party or not, and a host of different issues. But the point is there's going to be a list. And on that list, you're going to have addresses. You're going to have things about the person, most likely. So it may say the age of the person you're looking for, the name of the person you're looking for, whether they're registered with a particular party. It may tell you things like the last time they voted. So you're going to have some sort of data going in to know. And depending on where you're canvassing, we were in part of Stark County, Ohio. So that's where Lorraine is running. That's where I'm from. It's a part of Stark County where the houses are kind of far apart. So we did just park the car and walk down the street. But since you're not hitting every house, there were times when we were walking a pretty good distance between the houses that we were hitting.
Where are they gathering that information for the list? Is that usually from like voter records, from public voter records, or is that from, previous lists of volunteers?
So I think that this comes from the state party usually. And so the party has a way of getting voter registration records, voter registration and voting history records of every voter in the state. So the Democratic Party will also get the records for the Republicans and vice versa.
So do they give you a script of things that you're supposed to say, or do they just give you a general idea about what you should say? What's sort of the scripting like?
So I think that this is gonna also depend on the campaign a little bit. So I was out with Lorraine, and Lorraine does not like scripts. She doesn't want to read from a script. She doesn't want to, sort of just go by what you're sort of supposed to say. There may be some campaigns where they would give you sort of talking points. At the very least, a campaign will spend a little bit of time training you on what the positions are for that candidate, something so you're able to answer questions. And you're always going to have literature with you. And so the literature is going to be generally like a little pamphlet or a door hanger or something. Because a lot of houses, you're not going to actually get anybody there. They're not going to be home. And so at those houses, you just leave the literature. But even when you do talk to someone, you always leave the literature. So they have the name of the candidate, the website, a few of the things they really stand for. And so, you're going to have that with you to reference as well.
Let's talk through the process of actually knocking on a person's door. Because I think for a lot of people, myself included, this is the part that terrifies them and makes them think I couldn't do that. sort of, what is the experience like knocking on the door of a complete stranger and being like, hi, can I talk to you about, politics, this thing that a lot of us have been taught not to talk to strangers about?
Sure. So what I'm going to say is that the first time you go out, you're not going to go by yourself. And so I was not by myself. I was actually with Lorraine at each door, and Lorraine did the vast majority of the talking. But now that I've seen her do it, I am a little more comfortable with it and could go by myself on a future time. So first of all, you're not going to be by yourself. The first time you go out, you're going to be with someone who has done this before and can sort of show you how to do it. And keep in mind that most of the houses you go to, nobody will be home. I think the hit rate is usually like 30% of houses you might actually talk to a person. Even when you do talk to a person, you might not talk to the person that you're going there to talk to. So, at any given house, there may be 2 or 3 registered voters living there, but maybe only one of them is on your list, right? Because only one of them meets whatever criteria the candidate or the campaign has set for who they want to be talking to. So, you knock on the door. Generally, you're not going to get anybody. You're going to knock or ring the doorbell a second time, wait a minute and then walk away, put the literature there and walk away. When someone does answer, you're not going to have a lot of time to talk to someone in most cases. They're going to be standing there literally in the door, right? Like talking to you while they're holding their door open. And, you want to sort of immediately identify yourself. Lorraine and I were both wearing shirts that said in real big letters, Lorraine Wilburn. So it was obvious who we were, what we were there with. And she starts in with, hi, I'm Lorraine Wilburn. I'm running for state representative in the 48th district, which is your district, at this residence. So if you're not the candidate themselves, you're starting in with, hi, my name is, I'm here with the campaign for. A lot of people aren't even going to know who their state representative or state senator, or maybe even their congressional representative is. So, they probably don't know what district they're in. So just saying like, this is your district. This is something you might care about. And then usually where Lorraine would go from there would be to ask the person, what are the issues that you care about? So, the same sort of thing we do interviewing a candidate on the podcast, right? We say things like, so tell me about the issues that are really motivating you. Well, that's the same thing that you're asking a voter that you want to connect with. What are the issues? And so then that's going to give you the opening for a lot of the people are going to be saying their issues they care about are healthcare, education, employment, things like that. The same things likely that are concerning everybody. And, you're going to know the district that you're in pretty well. And so then you can follow that up with something about how the candidate, what the candidate thinks about those particular issues. So if it's healthcare, well, this candidate really wants to expand access to healthcare, expand affordable healthcare, maybe wants to expand Medicaid, or Medicare for all, or, whatever it is. There's going to be some position that you can follow up with for the candidate. Most people do not want to talk at the door that long, right? They're not going to be looking to make this conversation take longer. So you're probably not going to have a lot of people being like, well, what do they think about this? And why not this position? Not to say that wouldn't happen. It certainly didn't happen to us when we were out canvassing.
So when I spoke with you right immediately after you had finished canvassing, we had been texting, and you had said that you had a really good conversation with a voter. Can you tell us a little bit about that conversation and how that went?
Yeah. And so one of the things that you do when you're out canvassing, one of the very most important things you do is collect data. So data about that person wasn't home, that person was home, and this is the issue they really care about. This person said they do vote, they don't vote, those sorts of things. So one of the things when Lorraine had been out a few days prior to that, she had found someone at a house, wasn't on her list. It was somebody else who lived in the house who was, had just turned 18, wasn't registered to vote. So we were going back to that house so that Lorraine could bring a voter registration form. So she had marked on the list, this person who lives here needs a voter registration form. I want to make sure she's registered to vote because she's likely to vote for me. And we were headed back there to give her that form. So when we got to that house, the person she was actually trying to get the form to wasn't there, but another person living in the house was there. And it was actually the person she had previously been trying to talk to and hadn't. And so it was, a fortuitous circumstance that this woman was home. She happened to have time right then to talk. She was sitting out on her porch, so she invited us to just sit down on the porch. It was a hot day and the breeze was blowing, a really nice breeze right on her porch, nowhere else on the street, but her porch had this great breeze. And so we were able to sit and have a longer conversation with her. And I think that's fairly rare when you're out canvassing, but it was really, really great to experience. This woman had some particular things that she was very concerned with, issues that meant a lot to her. And, I certainly got the impression that the current representative had never been around asking her about these sorts of issues. She was a registered Republican, but she seemed pretty open-minded about who she would vote for. She just wanted to be heard. And, she had very difficult issues about an assisted living facility that she had worked in and certain things that she thought should change with assisted living facilities, and situation with her son who had some problems with drug abuse. And so she just had these very specific concerns, but it was really, really important, both I think for a candidate to hear that, but also for a volunteer to hear that and to realize these are real issues that affect real voters. And they're not easy fixes. I mean, no candidate could get up and just say, oh yeah, I'll fix all of these things immediately on day one. They can't. But, it was really clear for me watching Lorraine talk to this woman that she really cared about these issues, and she wasn't making promises about, things that she could or couldn't do, but she was really hearing the woman. And I think that is so important. I think a lot of people, nobody's talking to them and they don't feel heard. And so that's one of the really valuable parts of canvassing, is that you get to actually be the person who is talking and caring about these people's stories. So that was really, it was deeply moving that she shared those things with us. And it felt like a really good conversation. I don't know for sure if she'll vote for Lorraine, but I got the sense that she probably would. And because Lorraine took the time to listen to her, and we were there for quite a while, this woman may then talk about Lorraine with her friends, say, oh wow, this person came, and didn't just send staffers out or something, but, the candidate herself showed up at my house and she listened to me. And so I think that's the kind of thing that could be really, really valuable in this election.
Did you have any sort of negative experiences, or did you find it just sort of a positive experience overall?
I mean, overall, it was pretty positive. There was at least one house where the people were clearly home and didn't answer the door, but that's fine. I've done that. I understand. So that didn't seem like a negative. It was just like, oh, well, that's what happens. We talked to a woman who, she wasn't on our list. It was her husband who was on the list. And, she didn't seem super enthusiastic about talking, but, she wasn't rude about it. She took the literature and said that she would tell her husband that we had come there. So, we didn't have anything that was at all a negative, and I got a lot of steps in on my Fitbit, so.
Always important.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in Fitbit challenges, go out canvassing.
How long did you canvass for?
I think we were probably out there about an hour, which is a pretty short time period. Again, my experience was a little bit unique because I was with the candidate herself. I think usually when you go out canvassing, a shift is a little bit longer, like 2 or 3 hours. And especially if you've driven a ways to get there, you want it to be worth your time to have gone out there.
Mm-hmm. And approximately, rough estimate, how many people do you think you talked to?
Actually talked to, I think probably just like 3. It wasn't many because, like I said, a lot of the houses, there was a lot of room between the houses, and a lot of the houses themselves, just nobody answered the door.
Mm-hmm. So what, I guess, advice would you have for people who were thinking about going out and canvassing? Sort of how would you recommend they get started And what are some hot tips?
So I think first is just go do it. Just go try. I mean, I found the whole